No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way.
He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Walking on it though, then
He a
you can't
legend.
it up later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the LCK. We're going to do a quick LEC tier list, and we're going to talk about LEC Week 1. So first, let's go to Korea. Tomorrow we have a couple of matches. Gen G against DRX. Gen G minus 250, DRX plus 175. I don't hate the idea of going with DRX in this spot with an outright victory. I think that people's expectations for DRX are obviously a little bit lower going into this split because their roster is completely new. But Gen G really didn't look very good in their first match, so I wouldn't be totally shocked if we got an early season upset. I think that Doran against Rascal is pretty close. They've been very close for a long time. Croco and Peanut. Croco had a bad first match from like a kill score perspective, but I don't think that he is much worse than Peanut. I do prefer Peanut because historically he's been a better player, but Croco, has some good performances every once in a while. Chovy against Fate, I do prefer Chovy for sure. Deocdom and Beryl against Pays and Delight. I probably prefer Deocdom and Beryl. I think that's one spot where they do have an advantage. Pays is thought of as a very talented young player, and maybe this is a good opportunity for him to kind of showcase that he is or has the potential to be an elite 80 carry. But I really think that at plus 175, it makes sense to bet on DRX if you're betting outright. That seems like a pretty good line to me because that means that they have like between a 30 to 35% chance of winning, I think, according to the sportsbook, and I think it's higher than that at plus 1.5. So, and the other thing is at plus 1.5, the spread, the line for that is minus 188. So that suggests it's the most likely outcome, or the more likely outcome between whether or not they're getting swept. The sportsbook is basically saying we don't think they're getting swept tomorrow. The next match we have Kwangdong against Fredit Brion, Dudu against Morgan. That's probably the one spot I think that Fredit Brion has the advantage. Fredit Brion looked better in their first match, but they did play against Nongshim, so I'm not putting too much into that. So, I don't know. Not a really easy way to lean one way or the other, but I don't like the idea of betting on Fredit Brion as a favorite. I think we need to keep in mind that, they played Nongshim, and I don't think that Nongshim, I don't think they looked horrible at all. They should have probably won that first game. It didn't work out for them. I guess the experience of Fredit Brion kind of shone through in that match. So I'd probably take Kwangdong moneyline. That doesn't really scare me. That's basically it. And then I guess I'll do Sunday's matches as well. So Sandbox against Homalife. I definitely prefer Homalife here. They did look pretty good in their first match. Zika, obviously, very good player, and people, are completely aware of that nowadays. Going into Worlds, a lot of people didn't have a high opinion of him. I did. So Homalife minus 2,000. I'm definitely on that side. Plus Sandbox plus 1.5 maps, meaning they have to win one game, is plus 225. I think I like that. That seems like a good number to me. I think I have a parlay tomorrow for that, so I don't think I'm going to bet on that specifically. But the plus 225 is kind of surprising. If you look at it lane by lane, Kingen against Birdall. Birdall has been the more highly thought of player for a long time. Obviously, Kingen has that good Worlds performance, and we can't take anything away from him in that respect. But I think overall, Birdall probably has the better pedigree. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Willer against Clid. I think I'd prefer to have Willer on a team just because I feel like he has more upside and he's more of a carry threat. Right now, the jungle meta is kind of like Vi, Maokai, Sejuani, Poppy. Like, if it goes that way, then yes, Clid will always be relevant in the game, even if he's just like a tank and dying first and everything like that. But Willer, I think, has a higher upside. He could really take over a game, I think, where I don't think Klid does that as often. Closer against Zika. I love Zika. I think that Closer is a very similar player to Zika. He has that high upside that we're looking for in mid laners. It's one of the reasons why I'm higher than most people on Sandbox, I think, for the season. So this could be a good spot for him to show that he can compete with a player of Zika's caliber. And then Envy and Kale against Viper and Life in the bot lane. That's probably the biggest disparity in this matchup. Definitely heavily prefer Humble Life in that situation. So if I'm Sandbox, I'm going into this match drafting for bot lane priority and trying to play around it. Don't let Viper get super far ahead. That's probably the way to go in my mind. Then we have KT Rolster against Nongshim. And again, KT Rolster has a lot more name recognition. Keen, Cuz, BDD, Aiming, Lehens. Nongshim has... I'm saying Dun now. I think that I heard that on the broadcast. Sylvie, Fiesta, Vital, and Peter. Fiesta forever, obviously. But yeah, I do prefer KT there. It's at minus 800. You're not betting that. So let's move on. Let's talk about my LEC tier list. I did mention a lot of these rankings previously, and I don't rank teams into tiers based on their region. I look at it from the global perspective. The reason I do that is because a lot of other people have to take all of their different rankings and then try to push them into one. I try to keep them in the separate tiers from the get-go so that when I'm comparing teams across the world, I can say, well, that is a D team, not a D team from the LEC. They are a D team. So first up, we have 3 teams in the D tier. We have Heretics, BDS, and SK Gaming. I do think that my opinion is changing a little bit on this. So let's just talk about the players that are involved. So for SK, we have Irrelevant, Marcoon, Certus, Exakick, and DOS. For BDS, we have Adam, Shio, Nuclear Int, Crowny, and Labrav. And then for Heretics, we have Eevee, Yonkos, Ruby, Jack Spectra, and Mursa. Based off of what I've been hearing, I think people have some good things to say about each of these teams. Obviously, for SK Gaming, people have a high opinion of Marcoon. He has been a pretty good player. For BDS, we've seen Adam play well, but we've also heard that he's pretty toxic. Labrav has been an okay support, nothing special. Shio, I think, is coming in and is someone that a lot of teams wanted to acquire, but they weren't able to. And then for Heretics, we have Eevee, Yonkos, Ruby, Jack Spectra, and Mursa. And a lot of people are they have high expectations for Jack Spectra. I don't have as high of expectations for Jack Spectra, but they're all still D-tier teams in my mind. And what that means is they are a below-average team in general across the world. I have all 3 of these teams ranked in the 40s out of the 47 teams, I believe, that are out there for the 4 major regions. The only teams that are lower than these 3 are, I think, 2 teams from the LCS. So I don't have high opinions for any of these teams. I don't think they're going to be making it very far in playoffs or seriously compete with the teams that are above them. So let's move on, because we're going to talk a little bit more about these teams in their matchups specifically. So let's do the next 3 teams. And these aren't necessarily in order. I have it as Astralis is the last out of these 3 teams. So let's talk about Astralis first. We have Finn, 113, Dajor, Kabe, and Jonghoon. The reason why I have hope for Astralis is because of Jonghoon. I think he's a very good support, and he has the upside of being one of the best in Europe. I could easily see him being acquired by one of the better teams in the LEC and being on what we would eventually consider an elite team. I don't think we can say the same for Finn. I don't think that we can say the same for Dajor or Kabe. But if everybody else can kind of stay out of his way, I think Jonghoon can actually carry games from the support position. It'll be interesting to see if that can happen in this meta. Next up, we have Mad Lions, Chasey, Elyoya, Niski, Karzi, and Hylissang. It'll be interesting to see what public consensus ends up being on Mad Lions. I don't like Elyoya as much as most people, but he is a carry jungler. I don't know if carry junglers are going to be rewarded in this meta specifically. If you're an elite carry jungler like Kanavi, it's a different level. But again, the competition is of a different level, so we might see Elyoya doing similar things as Kanavi in these games. Although I think that if they played each other in a match, that Kanavi would come out on top, obviously. Niski, I don't like Niski. I think that he, plays too much for the side lanes, and I think that is the best case scenario for him. I think he should be doing that. But if I'm going to have a player on my team that needs to play that play style, I don't like it. I feel like that's a limiting factor. Karzi and Hillsong, I kind of like the idea of that bot lane. A lot of people are kind of making the jokes about them being the most like high variance bot lane. And I think some people mean it as a negative. I think for this team specifically, that's a positive, and it's going to be a main part of their identity. I think that Elyoya plus Karzi plus Hillsong can get a lot of work done. Niski's going to be an afterthought. He might have some good performances and might pick up a lot of kills sometimes, but I don't think he's really going to be the one creating for his team. That's going to come down to the other players. And then Chasey, I'm not sure what to expect out of him, to be honest, coming from a minor region. I know he's from Korea, but he hasn't played at the highest levels in Korea for a good team, so I don't have a super high opinion of him because they are the Korean League of Legends community is very good at talent evaluation in general, and they would have used him if they thought that he was very good. Now we have Fnatic, and Fnatic is the team that I have the biggest difference of opinion with most people. If we take a look at the sports book, we have Astralis, BDS, and SK Gaming, all very long odds. Heretics and Mad Lions are shorter than that, and I have them in the same tier. But Fnatic is plus 275. People are saying they're the second or third best team in the LEC, and I just don't see that. I know that a lot of people have just much higher opinions of these players in general. Wonder, Razor, Humanoid, Reckless, Rux. Reckless, he's a okay AD carry. He's nothing special at this point. He is not the best AD carry in the region. He's not the best AD carry in the West. If you took all 20 AD carries from the West, he's going to be right in the middle somewhere. He's not a difference maker. And even when Reckless was at his peak, I don't know if we should really call him like a huge playmaker, a huge difference maker. He would farm up and be relevant in the team fights, but a lot of AD carries can fill that role, which is why, I think people liked him. He was on a very popular team. He was one of the most popular players, and he was around forever, so everybody kind of loved the guy, and I don't blame you guys for doing that. It's just, let's be realistic about his talent level. Rux, I think I was watching a Casual video, and he was talking up Rux, saying, I love the idea that this guy's coming in, he's like 25, 26 years old, and we shouldn't not want him in there just because he's older. That's not really the point. I'm not saying that I don't want him on an LEC team because he's older. I don't want him on an LEC team because he's older and not very good. If Rux has a good split, it's going to be because Fnatic is winning games. I'd be shocked if Rux comes out and is a huge difference maker. I think that for the most part, Razork and Humanoid are going to be the main part of this team that makes them win games. And sometimes Rux will be roaming, but it's not like Rux is doing something that other supports cannot do. If you have Razork and Humanoid and somebody that's very experienced like Reckless, and you have Wonder, they could kind of tell anybody where to go. Would you rather have Rux on this team or Jonghoon? It's obviously Jonghoon. If you don't think that it's Jonghoon, then I don't really know what you're watching. He's clearly a better player than Rux, and I understand that not every team can have the best player at every position, but you're better off finding the next Jonghoon than recycling somebody like Rux, in my mind. And if he comes out and he plays really well and he is turns out to be an elite support as a 26-year-old, then great for him. I don't expect that to happen at all. So I have Fnatic as my 5th best team in the league, and I don't really feel too bad about that. I think that everybody's kind of overrating them. And the funny thing is we'll get in to the playoffs at some point. Fnatic will probably be in the playoffs. Does that mean that they have a realistic chance of winning the tournament? They could win the tournament, obviously, but I just think it's much lower than people think. I will be actively betting against Fnatic this season. Let's go to the B tier. Next up, 2 more teams. We have XL and Koi. Again, I was watching something yesterday. I think it was the LEC Euphoria stuff that they have. And they were talking about Koi, saying that Koi was going to be they were saying that Koi should be thought of as the best team in the LEC going into the season. I don't agree with that. I think that they're probably third. So let's talk about XL first. So XL, we have Odoamne, Xerxes, Vetio, Patrick, and Targamas. I'm really surprised at how people are talking about XL. XL has plus 1,200 odds. That seems crazy to me. XL is definitely a better team than Mad Lions right now, I think. Odoamne is better than Chasey. Xerxes is closer to Elioya than a lot of people think. Vetio is much better than Niski, like significantly better than Niski. Patrick is much better than Carzzy. He's much more of a diverse player. I know that his go-to style is to be the late game carry, and that is a very high. That's a very difficult thing to do, and a very difficult thing to have as your main thing. It requires you to be conservative and patient. Not every player is patient. Carzzy, for example, is not patient, and that's okay. Some teams don't need a playmaker at the ADC position or someone that takes risks, and other teams desperately need a conservative AD carry. And I think that for XL, this is going to fit really well. And then we have Targamas. It's funny. People were saying that Targamas was super good last year, and then that all kind of went away. I think that Junghoon is better than Targamas, but I think that Targamas is kind of in the same mold. They do seem like they will be long-term supports in the LEC. They will be around on good teams for a long time, I think. And, that's a good thing for XL to have. Vetio and Patrick are going to be the heart and soul of this team. It's really going to be up to them to carry games. Xerxes and Targamas are going to have to coordinate well and put those two players into positions. They're going to have to drag them into the mid-game because we want Vetio and Patrick being conservative for most early and mid-game situations. But at plus 1,200, I like them a lot. That's a team I'm watching out for, and I think that you might have some opportunities to bet on them early on in the season. Next up, we have Koi. So we have Shigenda, Malrong, Larson, Comp, Trimby. It's obviously still a good team. I was pretty high on them for a lot of last season. Comp and Trimby are a good duo. Trimby is one of the best supports in the region at this point. Larson, one of the best mid laners. Malrong, one of the best junglers. I know his style isn't everybody's favorite style, but it's effective. And if your team knows how to play around it, then it's a good style to play. Some people were voicing concern that in this meta, it might not make sense for Malrong to gank as much as he does because you're not creating as big of an advantage with the new jungle changes. But I think at the end of the day, Malrong doesn't need to play the way that he plays. I think that he does it because it fits his team's play style, and he's willing to sacrifice his own economy for his team's economy, which is smart for the most part. And then Shigenda, he's really the big question mark on this team. He has been in the league before, and he has been a carry top laner in the past. Some people are asking him to be, an Ornn player or a Gragas player. I think they were talking about yesterday. I want him to be a carry. I think that Odoamne, he had some good carry performances last year, but he is not a great carry player. I think that Shigenda could be a better carry player than Odoamne. I wonder if he can be as good at playing weak side. That's kind of what we need to see this split. Then in the A tier, we have the final two teams, and that is my way of saying I don't think that we have any S tier teams in the LEC, and that's okay. You don't have to have an S tier team in every region. It doesn't mean that one of these teams won't emerge as an S tier team. I just don't have any of them ranked as S tier right now. They're both A tier. So G2, I think, is the second best team in the region. I think that we have Broken Blade, Yike, Caps, Hansama, and Mickey. And when I talked about this team, a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago at this point, I said, G2 probably has gotten Yike to be this farm-style jungler, and they're going to give him a lot of resources and try to have him carry. People were making fun of me in the comments for saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, but every single person that you listen to talk about it on YouTube who made videos after me, they're all saying the same thing. So either we're all wrong or the guy that was making fun of me in the comment section is wrong. I'm going to go with the guy in the comment section was wrong. Yike plays the correct champions for that type of playstyle that may not fit the meta right now. So he might not do it originally, but that is why teams were attracted to him. Broken Blade, one of the best top laners in the region. Yike, I'm not sure how good he's going to be, but I like the style that he plays. Caps, one of the best mid laners in the region. Mickey and Hansama, good bot lane duo, one of the better duos in the region. Definitely top 4, top 5 in the region. I think that, it comes down again to how good can Yike be, because Broken Blade is going to do his job for the most part. Caps is going to carry games randomly, but somewhat consistently as well. And then we have Hansama and Mickey. I don't expect Hansama and Mickey to be the big difference makers on this team. I think that's mostly going to be thrust onto Caps again. And if it's solely on Caps, it means that we need a good performance from Yike to give him enough breathing room in the mid lane. If he's constantly getting run over in the jungle, then we're going to have problems for like G2 against the G2 against the team that I think is the best in the region, which is Vitality. And going into this split, I'm really unsure about Photon specifically, but I still think it's a very good roster. Photon, Bo, Perks, Neon, Kaiser. I think that Photon, originally I didn't like the signing. I didn't think it made a lot of sense. I would want a player with higher upside. It sounds like he may have been chosen because he's a good fit stylistically for what they want to try and do with their team. I think a very realistic scenario is that we go into the early season. Everybody's playing like tank junglers and stuff like that. Then we have Bo come in with some carry junglers and completely blows teams out of the water, and it's going to force teams to play differently against Vitality as opposed to the rest of the teams in the league. Photon is going to play your weak side. Bo is going to be the focal point of the team. Perks is going to do everything he can to get Bo ahead. And then we have Neon and Kaiser. Their job is going to be in the early game, don't die. And then in the late game, try and carry. If Bo hasn't created a gigantic advantage. And some people might think it's not realistic some people might not think it's realistic to put all this pressure on Bo. But Bo is a very talented player. You don't see players like him very often, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the LEC. If we had high expectations for Malrong coming in, well, maybe not high expectations. If everybody kind of gave Malrong the benefit of the doubt, I think that was fair. I think based off of what we've seen from Bo in relation to Malrong coming in, we saw some games from him. He wasn't really the best player on Damwon. He filled in for spurts when they were going through the whole Ghost issue with like their team just not functioning the right way, and then everybody kind of role swapping and trying something else out. I think that the difference is with a player like Bo, if Bo did not get banned for match fixing, he would have been an elite jungler in China. And China is a more difficult region overall than the LEC. So we would have this super high opinion of Bo. If Bo came over as an import after dominating the LPL, not dominating, but being one of the better junglers in the LPL for a year and a half or 2 years, we would have expectations of him being the best jungler in the LEC, and I think that he is the best jungler in the LEC. Some people don't like inconsistent junglers. I love high variance junglers. I want my jungler going out there and trying to put his team in a position to win the game early on. Let the other team play conservatively. They're going to give you space on the map. They're going to not contest objectives because they're afraid of Bo. And that's going to play right into Vitality's hand. I think Vitality's going to get a lot of wins early on. They might throw some games. They might have these high variance games where they try to coin flip it early on and completely get blown out of the water. That's very possible. If their playstyle falls behind from an economy perspective, that could be a big problem. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that it's a pretty easy game plan to follow. If you say, first 8 minutes of the game, play somewhat conservative. If Bo sees an angle, let him try to take the angle. If it's not there and you get to the 7-minute and 30-second mark, then rotate bot towards Rift Herald, get Bo to take Rift Herald, and then start pressing that advantage and accelerating the game. It's really not difficult, and I know that some people don't like hearing that and saying, oh, you can't predict what's going to happen in a game. League of Legends is not a very complicated game. The game flow is very predictable. And if you go into these games with specific drafts in mind because you have a specific game plan, it makes the game much easier to play. And that's why professional games often look a lot different than solo queue. And that's also why there are huge differences between professional teams. Some teams look like they never have a plan. Other teams look like the game's super easy. It's because they have a plan. So let's take a look at the matches for this weekend. I'm going to go through every game. So G2 against XL. I think from a tier list perspective, obviously, I think that G2 is the better team. At plus 150, I am somewhat interested in betting on XL, but I think G2 gets the job done there. Okay, I can't click on all of them. Next up, Koi against BDS. I'm taking Koi. No surprise there. Heretics against Astralis. I think that this is a good underdog spot for Astralis. I actually have a parlay on. I have a parlay in. I have Excel in the first game, I think. Then I have Koi. Then I have Astralis because I think that's a pretty huge line for two teams I think are in a very similar situation. Then we have SK Gaming against Mad Lions. I have Mad Lions in that match. And then Fnatic against Vitality. Vitality, as an underdog, I think that's the wrong line. I think Vitality should be slightly favored. But this is comes down to public sentiment. Not everybody, most people have a higher opinion of Fnatic than Vitality. That's fine. If you think Fnatic is better than Vitality, then you should think that this is a pretty okay line. Throw your money on it. Get back to me with how that goes for you. If they win, cool. You win this round. I think that Vitality will be the better team long term, and that will either be a great end to my Saturday, or it'll be a horrible end to my Saturday. Although the Giants are playing right after that, so my Saturday could get much better or much worse very fast. Sunday, 5 more games. SK Gaming against Team BDS. I'll take BDS as the underdog in that situation. It's a slight underdog. It's nothing special, but I'll take the longer odds. Astralis against Mad Lions. I'll take Mad Lions. If Astralis looks very good in their first game, that's the only reason why I would consider betting this number. If they go in and upset Heretics and blow them out of the water, I think that'll surprise a lot of people, and that would potentially beat down this number. That's all refreshing. Then we have Vitality against Heretics. I'm obviously on Vitality. Then we have XL against Koi. This is a pretty good spot for XL as well, I think. We should be betting on XL exceeding expectations because Vetio is very good. Targamas is a pretty good playmaker. Patrick is a good, consistent player. I want to be early on XL, even though I do have a high opinion of Koi as well. But in those spots, I generally want to take the underdog. Then we have G2 against Fnatic. I'll probably be on the G2 side here. I think that G2 is just clearly better than Fnatic. So that's that. Then on Monday, we have Heretics against SK Gaming. I'll probably take SK in this spot just because, again, they're too long of an underdog. XL against BDS, definitely on XL. G2 against Astralis, take G2. Fnatic against Koi, I'll be on Koi. And then Team Vitality against Mad Lions, I'll take Vitality. And that's a very good spot. Those odds should be longer, so I think Vitality on Monday is definitely a really good spot. Koi on Monday is a very good spot. SK Gaming against Heretics is an interesting one. I think I'll end up being on that. G2, XL. There aren't many that I think that are totally wrong, but again, what I would suggest is if you have any interest in betting these games, go through, watch this portion of the video again, and just try to hear for my level of conviction in these plays, because it's clear which ones I think are worthwhile betting on. But that's basically it. So I'm very excited. League of Legends is fully picking up steam at this point. We'll have 3 regions will have started their season. This time tomorrow. The LCS is coming about a week from now, I think, and then LPL will be back in a week or so. This is the best time of the year. You have NFL playoffs going on. You have League of Legends kicking back up. Great time to watch some games. But that's basically it. No Esports Center today. Hopefully there are some good highlights for tomorrow and I can make an Esports Center clip for the following day. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see how that goes. But anyways, thanks for watching. And I'll talk to you later.